Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I am Adrian Fort, and we are here for the 13th in about a 25-part series as we journey. I am just coming to the realization that we are only halfway through this series, and these videos are driving me absolutely nuts. So there's three parts to this video. The 13th in a 25-ish part series journeying two chapters at a time through Holly by Stephen King. There is a So What Happened, there is a Lit Crit, and there is a Writer's Corner portion of this video. So what happened in these two chapters? Well, I have to start off here. I may not have given Stephen King enough credit. I was absolutely positive that this couple would be ID'd by the van, the fact that they own a van, and maybe that is not the case. But Barbara shows up to the hospital. We start these pair of chapters at the hospital. It turns out Olivia has full blown butt cancer, as she calls it, but she doesn't say butt. It is malignant, but not metastasized. Barbara was called to the hospital because Olivia has something to tell her. Barbara's poetry has been shortlisted. Hooray. Cut 2, Holly gets a call from the Jetmart guy. He says there was another person, now that he's been thinking about it, that did disappear, a stoner. That the Jetmart guy calls Bowling Guy. And if you're a woman watching this, this is 100% how men talk about each other. Yes, that is how we refer to each other. I have had my job, the time slot, and the responsibilities and everything that I have right now for 6 years. There's the glass guy, there's funny hair guy, there's the walker guy. I know zero names. Anyone. I know zero names of anyone, and they don't know mine. And we're all okay with that. Not that that is pertinent, particularly pertinent to these pair of chapters. I just thought it was a nice little detail thrown in. Um, Holly then goes to the bowling alley and tracks down the manager who knows exactly who she's talking about. It's Carrie. She I can't read my own handwriting. But he disappeared. He was a shame. He disappeared. My handwriting is so bad I could not read the word shame. Very few things look like shame. This does not look like anything. He was a great worker and very popular. He used to fill in on teams that needed a plus one, especially the Golden Oldies. Only a few of those guys left, like Roddy. Roddy, who shows up on Monday nights, don't you know? So, here's the thing with this pair of chapters. There are quite a few, there are three notes on the lit crit portion, which are maybe promising developments for this novel. And then there's the writer's notes, which are very disappointing, especially for someone as practiced, we'll say, as Stephen King. On 243 into 244, we get of Barbara's visit to Olivia in the hospital. We get this. Olivia has all but assured her that her poems will be published, even if she doesn't win. They will be read, not by multitudes, but certainly by people who love the way she loves. Now, this is very real. There is verisimilitude to this. The people in these circles, in literary circles, in poetry circles, I dare say especially, but short story circles are largely the same when you get into academe. They're very closed knit. This is how literature dies, not with a bang, but a whimper. It is not through someone writing something so powerful that the powers that be, the governments of the world, have to conspire to limit what writers can and cannot say. It's that writers themselves constantly write themselves into smaller and smaller feelings, constantly write themselves into smaller and smaller emotions, constantly write themselves into smaller and smaller. um, I can't even think of the right word, because it is actually smaller and smaller general realizations, which doesn't make sense through the power of the English language. But that's what it is. These ideas that are spread in literature through the literati are increasingly niche. They are ideas which, so perhaps the last poet that expanded the boundaries of readership in poetry was Charles Bukowski. Since Charles Bukowski, possibly in reaction to Charles Bukowski, I have not done the research necessary to say that conclusively, possibly in reaction to Charles Bukowski, everyone is making poetry smaller. Robert Frost, very widely read during his time. These people who popularized poetry are shunned. Now, here's the thing. There is one popularizer of poetry in our day that I can think of, Rupi Kaur. I don't know if that is the exact pronunciation of her name. Like Milk and Honey or Milk for Honey, I don't know. I've read some of the poems and was not particularly impressed, but it is not for me to be impressed. Someone who was a Shakespearean scholar would have looked at Bukowski's poems and not been impressed. But it was Bukowski who reeled many people in to appreciating poetry. And he's doing it again. By the way, Bluebird and is it Gamblers All? Either way, two of Bukowski's poems are absolutely blowing up in the Sigma male sort of movement online. And he's popularizing more poetry, even though he's dead. So, this idea of her poems will be published, they will be read, not by multitudes, but certainly by people who love what she loves. Somewhere along the line, the literati forgot that the job of the literati is not to entertain the literati, it is to perpetuate literature. It is a shame what has become of poetry. It is a shame what has become of short stories. It is a shame what has become of the novel. It's a shame what has become of novelists like Stephen King. But I'm going to get off this high horse now because there are other things to talk about in this pair of chapters. If we flash forward to page 250, while we are with Holly herself, we have Holly on the hunt. She has gotten a lead and she's going to figure it out. She gets to the bowling alley, and the young man who is at the front desk says, "Oh, well, you'll need to talk to the boss lady. Her office is over there." So she goes. She knocks. Someone inside says, "Yow," which Holly takes as an invitation and opens the door. She would have opened it even if the person inside had said, "Go away." She's chasing the case. And when she's doing that, her natural timidity disappears. Unless she's talking to 13-year-old boys, in which case she needs to call the help of a grown man. Holly, Feminist 101. Don't you know? Really, Stephen? You lied to us a little bit there. Wow. So it turns out maybe I only have one positive note in this video, and that was the number one thing, which was kind of a rant on my end, because this next one, if we go to page 255, Holly slow walks across the lobby, listening to the rolls of balls and the crash of tin pins. She is about to push open the door to the foyer, bracing herself for the wave of heat and humidity that will strike her, then stops, eyes wide and amazed. My God, she thinks. Really? A cliffhanger, ladies and gentlemen. A legitimate cliffhanger. Are you not entertained? Do you not want to keep turning the pages? What a page turner Holly has turned out to be. I can't stand stuff like that. So leave it to someone who writes little cliffhangers like that to preach you on who should be reading poetry. And to preach to you on more things than that, to preach to you on what you're allowed to believe, even when medical journals have come out since the publication of this book and proven the assertions of this book, which is proclaiming to be a medical text, wrong. And we're going to get that with the last point on the writer's corner. But the first point in the writer's corner here, page 251. We have here Holly and Althea Haverty. They have started talking, and Althea is a bit of an alternative character. Now, Stephen's going to come back at that alternative character later because he's just so sassy. Holly introduces herself and explains what she wants. That gives us nothing, Stephen. Holly introduces herself and explains what she wants. What a useless throwaway masturbatory phrase. That's awful writing. Show us, don't tell us, give us the dialogue that got the characters there. Why? Why not? You have already done so much that was completely unnecessary on the page. Althea is at least an interesting character. She's a bit alternative. She's a bit of a nut job. She's a bit kooky. But those are fun characters to spend a few minutes with. What are you going to do? Go back to Holly putting on her mask and worrying about germs in her room? That's a lot of fun. Great. Thanks. I appreciate it. Pass by the alternative and wacky characters that you have written for yourself and show us more of Holly using hand sanitizer. Holly's an interesting character, so you give us how it is. Or not Holly, Althea is an interesting character, so you give us how it is that she receives Holly. You've given us little hints of it. Well, it ain't his folks paying your bills. I don't have to be a detective to know that. She's not stupid. She knows that the guy that was gone, the guy that disappeared, comes from a bad family. So they're not sending a private detective to find him. She's smart enough, bright enough to put that together. She's bright enough to run a business. But you just want to leave us with Wet Rag Holly. Just an absolute snot rag of a character. And now we're going to get to it. So, but right there, in that section, for a writer's note, a better way to do this is, especially if you're Stephen King, and you don't have to worry about an editor telling you you have to take out 30 pages of this novel. You don't have to worry about an editor telling you you've got to cut this down a couple thousand words. You've got all the real estate in the world here, Stephen. But what you do is you show us little bits of who Althea is through her dialogue, the way you've been doing in this section, in this chapter. And you can bounce Holly off of that. Build Holly up. And you could build Holly up even to where number 2 goes. It's not a poop joke. So Holly is, like I said, a snot rag of a character. She's not fun. She's not entertaining. She's not particularly bright. She's not interesting. She's not anything. She's Nick Carraway, right? She is a snot rag of a character. You can build her up. This is a person, Althea, that we know as the reader she's not going to like, but you don't build towards where we're going with number 2. You just jump to it. What you can do as Holly is introducing herself is build the tension. Maybe Althea keeps calling her Harley, right? Maybe Althea keeps dismissing the things that she's asking her. When Holly is telling her what she wants, she can be dismissive. Instead, what we get is on page 255. "Thank you for your time," Holly says and offers an elbow. Althea looks amused. "No offense, but I don't do that." Holly thinks, "My mother died of that fake flu, you gullible bee." What she says, and with a smile, is, "None taken." I was Holly right there. Just limp. Just a limp character. So what I'm going to use here is, I hate this phrase. I used to hate this phrase, especially when I started my second writer's circle. I was in St. Joe. And there was a guy in this writer's circle. He was the only one of us who had a proper creative writing class. So, of course, he knew all the right phrases. And he would pull them out whenever he disagreed with you. And one of those phrases was, one of the phrases he loved using, "Is this emotion earned?" No, it's not. What we have seen this entire 255 pages leading up to this is that Holly hates her mother. And now that she meets a woman she hates more than her mother, someone who's a Trump supporter and doesn't believe that the COVID flu was as dangerous as having to mask up for the rest of eternity and use hand sanitizer every 15 seconds. She meets someone who doesn't believe those things, and now she's on her mother's side. "My mother died of this fake flu." Now we're there? Really? Is this emotion earned? It is not. 255 pages of Holly hating her mother vanish like that when she meets someone that she finds more reprehensible than her mother, and she's just angry for her mother. This is not Stephen King the writer. Stephen King the writer was a good storyteller. Stephen King the writer was, I dare say, a great storyteller. I would never say he was a great writer. The craft was not his strong point. Stephen King was immensely successful at getting people to follow along with the story. The craft stuff could come and go in a lot of his novels. None of his writing is particularly quotable, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be. Every writer gets to be strong at what they're strong at. Stephen King was a great storyteller. Part of being a storyteller is evoking the correct emotions from your reader at the correct time. And the way you can do that is you've got these characters. You know these characters, and you can explain these characters so well, so immaculately to your reader that they feel the emotion before the character on the page knows they're suffering that emotion. This is just an escalation, and I hate to make something so big out of something, such a big deal out of such a small few sentences on the page, but this is what Stephen King has come to. This is Twitter warrior Stephen King. This is not the storyteller. Stephen King, whatever it is that has happened in the last 6-7 years, and again, I haven't read a whole lot of Stephen King post like 1990. But whatever it is that has happened, at least over these last 2 novels that he's written, Fairy Tale and Holly, he's completely broken as a storyteller. In my opinion, I guess I should say. But I think it's out there on the page. I think it's easy to see he's completely broken as a storyteller. I don't think anyone would put Fairy Tale and The Shining on the same shelf. Fairy Tale and It. Fairy Tale and On Writing. Fairy Tale and Danse Macabre, which are not literary excursions. It's not even storytelling, really. And they're so much better than Fairy Tale, so much better than Holly. Now, Holly is more storyteller-ish than was Fairy Tale. Fairy Tale was a slog through the mud. But whatever it is that happened that made Stephen King decide, I don't have to be true to characters anymore. I can just put my godforsaken emotions on the page, not even filtering it through a character. Who does that? Whatever it is that happened absolutely broke Stephen King as a writer. That's all I have for this video. The 13th in a 25-ish part series, journeying 2 chapters at a time through Holly. There's poetry on the channel every Monday. We're going through the Finkavigia edition right now. All of Ernest Hemingway's short stories. A read along for that. A read along for Dubliners, not the Dubliners. I keep saying the Dubliners. A read along for Dubliners by James Joyce. We're going through the collected poems of Sylvia Plath, poem by poem right now as well. There are all sorts of read-alongs going through on the channel, and often one-offs as well. If you did not catch the darkest detail in The Shining, I'm particularly proud of that video. So it would mean a lot to me if you went over there and checked that out, and I hope to have you back for the next one.